It's time for Supply Chain Now Radio, broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Supply Chain Now Radio spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
Good morning, Scott Luton here with you live on Supply Chain Now. Welcome back to the show. We're broadcasting live, if you can't tell, from MODEX, the largest supply chain trade show in the Western Hemisphere. It's being held right here in Supply Chain City, Atlanta, GA. On today's show, we're speaking with two supply chain technology leaders. We're going to be discussing the importance of optimization and transparency at every level of the organization, and we're going to be talking about just what the heck the movie Moneyball has to do with your warehouse.
People are Googling that as we speak.
That's right. Stay tuned. Your supply chain tech IQ is bound to be improved and increased in this episode. Quick programming note, like all of our podcasts here at Supply Chain Now, you can find us wherever you get your podcast from. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single thing. So let's welcome in my fearless, esteemed co-host on today's show, Greg White, serial supply chain tech entrepreneur and trusted advisor. Greg, how you doing?
I'm doing really well. It's a beautiful day.
Yep.
Right? We had a great show. I mean, we've had so much, so many interesting conversations.
Yeah,
and it's been an incredible show. I think there's a great dynamic amongst the exhibitors. MHI has been really supportive of folks. Except for holding these poor cats up at the door a little bit today. But other than that, we're doing great.
So this kicks off our third day of coverage. And yesterday was probably our busiest day with the Atlanta Supply Chain Awards.
Yes.
More about that down the road. But today I'm really excited about this episode. So let's introduce our guests, and we're going to dive right in. So first up, to my right, we've got Hector Orozco, CEO of Syncontext. And to my left, Robbie Cluett, Director of Customer Success and Business Development with Syncontexts as well. Hector and Robbie, good morning.
Yeah, welcome.
Good morning. It's great to be here, Scott.
It is great.
Glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having us.
It was we enjoyed our kind of our pre-show exchanges and what have you. We had a chance to meet y'all yesterday. I know y'all been busy here at MODEX, and looking forward to learning a little bit more about all the cool things y'all are up to. But before we talk about Syncontext, we want to talk about and kind of get y'all's story, okay?
Absolutely.
So, Hector, let's start with you. So tell us a little bit about where you're from and give us a story or two about your upbringing.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in supply chain and logistics for the past nearly 20 years.
Nice.
I like the way he says it, too.
Yeah.
You look 22.
Yeah. So I started
you're holding
about
up
2
pretty
years
good.
old.
Yeah, you're holding up pretty good.
But I started as an industrial engineer in continuous improvement and process engineering before moving to supply chain. So that's where I got some of the love and passion for data, continuous improvement. And I think that was the good start of the journey. I from there moved on to supply chain, managing a distribution network for another company. Went back to school and moved to the consulting world, where I worked for an international consulting firm in supply chain. And I was fortunate enough to work with some of the largest retailers in North America and get exposed to very interesting projects, designing distribution centers, optimizing operations, and
acting on your passion. I mean,
haven't
changed.
Exactly.
And practitioner first. I love that. I think that's a core, that's a core experience that people should have when they go into consulting is practitioner first, because it gives you so much insight into the issues that your clients are having every day, right? Sometimes, as you probably experienced in business school, it can be very, very
is that
theoretical.
What it stands for? Is that what it stands
for? That's what people tell me because I have absolutely no shot of everything. But it can become very, very theoretical.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And you've experienced the trials and tribulations of your clients.
Yes, and it helped me look for things that work in the real world.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, so before we get to your colleague Robbie here, give us, when you're not driving change and helping folks get a better handle around their operations, where do you spend that 2 minutes of free time each week?
Well, mostly with my family. I have 2 kids, 8-year-old girl, Victoria, and 6-year-old boy, Adam. So that's most of my time. I'm a fan of motorsports and MMA, surprisingly.
And the Canucks.
MMA, is that right?
Yeah. So
outstanding.
Tread softly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, look at these guys, man. We can't take either one of them.
All right, so let's switch gears over to Robbie Cluett. So, Robbie, give us a sense of where you're from and give us a story or two.
Yeah, absolutely. My background is not as extensive as Hector in the logistics industry, but it does stem back into business school. I actually did a business school in finance, so I worked a lot with numbers and those things. So
what a great combination!
Yes,
though I mean, really, right? And then practical experience and
exactly,
the finance side.
And I certainly understand the benefit of the practical experience, mostly on the warehousing side of things. I mean, when I joined early on at Syncontext, I joined as an analyst, so I kind of brought my school and my experience to the role and kind of understood, this is what a warehouse looks like, and you really start to learn the basics of it.
Yeah.
And even 5-6 years down the road, you're still learning new things, but you understand the practicality of just being able to walk through a warehouse, especially when we're there recommending improvement opportunities. They want to make sure that you've been there, that you understand at the ground level. And so I think
so true.
I think that's sort of the value that I've had over the past 6 years being with Syncontext, is to really take my experience, whether it's in finance or marketing, and tailor it to logistics and warehousing and supply chain that we're in now. And so, over the past 6 years, that's what I've done. And so, as I said, I joined Syncontext at the very early stages with Hector, a very small team in Vancouver at the very beginning. And
small but robust.
Very lean downtown Vancouver. So, a nice view from the office for sure.
That's good. Great city.
Yeah. The weather is shaky in the wintertime, but
you get paid back in food. That's right, because the food in Vancouver is astounding.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, to cap off, definitely have some experience in all sort of areas, but I joined in the early stages as an analyst, and now I'm director of customer success and business development. So,
driving growth, success,
yeah.
Getting a lot of stories behind the work you are doing out in the marketplace is so important. Telling stories these days it's such a premium. Traditional selling is tough in this market.
How often, though? I mean, if you think about it, how often do you get that finance perspective throughout the organization? When you think about it, I mean, if you think about a lot of warehouse. So I come out of retail and implemented the usual suspects in warehouse management in the day. Actually, we were one of the first implementers of PKMS, Manhattan's implementation. Their solution. But it was really brute force management at that point. Yes. And what a great opportunity to apply analytics and financial understanding to the improvements that need to be made in the warehouse, because we were flying blind a little bit.
Absolutely.
Right? And you can help prioritize those things that are most impactful.
Yes, and so Robbie has been instrumental in the growth of the company, but that approach of finance is critical, because nowadays it boils down to dollars, right? We're talking about investments. I remember when I was in operations, finding myself with a full warehouse, needing more capacity, expanding.
Right.
It's something that everybody in operations knew, but making the case to get those dollars approved, there's a lot of questions that go into it.
That's right.
So being able to bring that business side of things is important.
It's about the Benjamins or the Canadian dollars, or
absolutely.
Who's on
loonies.
Is that who's on the honey in Canada?
Kidding aside, y'all do business internationally, right? You're helping organizations. Yeah. So at this point, let's make sure, before we kind of go any further, let's make sure folks understand what Syncontext does. So beyond, what's the business beyond the name? And Hector, let's start with you.
Yeah, so we're a technology firm. We're specialized in cloud-based fulfillment optimization solutions.
Okay.
Essentially, that is helping companies take their data that's coming from labor management systems, warehouse management systems, and using algorithms to look for improvement opportunities. So whether it's changing their layout to reduce travel and improve selection productivity, designing a new facility, or simply on day-to-day reslotting of items, it's that's where the data comes in.
And that's a really big part of the business today is intraday reslotting or reconfiguring of the distribution center.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because as volumes change day to day, you have to respond to create that efficiency within the four walls.
Absolutely. It's about continuous improvement in the facility.
Yeah, outstanding.
Robbie, what would you add to what the company does?
Yeah, and I think Hector put it pretty quaintly. I think it really comes down to the data. At the end of the day, it's providing intelligence from the data that's already existing in the warehouse. I mean, we'll talk about this I think a little bit later on, but I mean, there's systems that exist today, like your traditional warehouse management systems, your labor management systems. In research that we've done over the past few years, and just in being in these warehouses, we know how prevalent they are. Systems are very common when it comes to management systems, but the data or the intelligence that comes out of them, the analytics, aren't always there to help drive continuous improvement. And it results in a lot of companies having issues. I mean, we'll go down that road a bit later, I think, but it results in a lot of issues that impact productivity, impact your overall cost of the business, even knowing what your cost of the business is. So I think the aspect that we bring in the analytics and the intelligence that we bring to the operations certainly go a long way, and that's our mission really, is to kind of take that management and bring it to optimization.
So now I want to know, y'all have kind of given me an appetizer. Yeah. This Moneyball for the warehouse. So if for those listeners that have seen the movie Moneyball, it's really based on the Billy Beane story with the Oakland A's, where he changed the paradigm and how their organization competed, and it has led to sabermetrics. It's led to kind of a revolution in how many baseball teams analyze their talent.
How they analyze the talent and situational aspects of the game as well. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
So if you've seen the movie, you'll love the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, go check it out. It came out probably roughly 10 years ago. It's got Brad Pitt in it, so he does a great job.
He does fantastic.
So what is
drives a cool truck too?
Yes, and Hector, I'm going to ask you, why is Syncontext like Moneyball for the warehouse?
Yeah.
So that was a good analogy that came out of one of the partner companies that we were working with. Being analysts at heart, we usually try to explain it with all the details of pallet configurations and
you fall down rabbit holes very quickly.
Yeah.
And after,
it's a warehouse, right?
We got a couple
it
pallets
gets
right
tactical real quick, right?
Yeah. And after 30 minutes, they just say, "Okay, so you're like Moneyball for the warehouse." We love that analogy. We just see, and this is not just from our perspective, but as the industry that we follow, we see that often companies struggle to make decisions for planning year-over-year growth or
they do it by the gut.
Yeah, exactly. So they use their experience, and there's very, very knowledgeable people there. But we think that using the data to drive the progress and in the hands of seasoned operators, it makes a compelling argument. And it just going back to Moneyball, that really that theory changed sports analytics. So that's something that we see in the future, just being a toolkit that it's in every facility, same as the LMS or WMS are there. And so no, we're not the Brad Pitt.
I don't know.
We're more like the character that Jonah Hill plays. Yeah.
The analyst.
The data cruncher. So
which I loved in that movie. Not to go too much further on that movie, but I love the conversations between Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill in that movie. Kind of you saw the two worlds of the guts and the experience, and been there, done that, and kind of what's my instinct telling me with the numbers. It was such a fascinating movie.
But I mean, if you think about it, those two worlds have collided
That's
here
That's
as
right.
well.
Right here on this.
You had the experience. You went and got the practical education. You collided with the finance gifts of that Robbie has, and have really kind of emulated that
That's
story in some way,
Yep.
right?
So moving right along, because we could this be a 3-hour episode on Moneyball.
I could go word
Let's
for word if you want me to. Some of
Let's
those words
shift
we'd have to
gears.
bleep.
Let's shift gears. Let's talk about some of the problems, Robbie, that Syncontext is helping their customers solve. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it really starts at, all 3 levels of planning and execution. So right at the top, when it comes to, say, a VP of supply chain that's wanting to find more dollars in their budget. So how do they do that? How do they approach that problem? Do they invest in automation? And obviously we're proponents of automation in our business. And, some of our most impactful or most successful implementations have been in facilities with a high level of automation. I mean, we love walking around highly automated facilities. It's great to see and around.
You're in the right spot.
Exactly.
Here at
MODEX.
MODEX.
How it's really progressed, but we do know the challenges when there's every booth is selling, or every booth has a great a product for automation, and there's so many things out there. First of all, how do they do that? How do they make that decision on what to invest in? And from the operator's perspective is how do they find the dollars? And I guess they're going from the same problem as the VP, but essentially is how do you find dollars in your business that either puts it back in your budget or makes you look good as an operator that's running the business? How do you find more dollars in your labor budget? How do you increase productivity? How do you know what metrics to look at? And so going back to the management system problem is if they are having these problems when it comes to, say, SKU proliferation, seasonality.
SKU proliferation.
All
right, so for our folks in college, maybe, or early entry into supply chain, kind of,
or CEOs.
Yeah,
right. Because they hear it all the time and nobody explains it to them.
Okay.
Right.
So in a nutshell, what's SKU proliferation?
So it's essentially the variety of the SKUs. So if you're a high mix environment, like say in grocery, we're heavily involved in grocery. The SKU mix changes throughout the year, and it causes problems when it comes to where does that item go when it comes into the warehouse. So this is a new item. Where do I put that? And so if you calculate that over 365 days, you're having whatever the percentage is of your SKUs changing.
Yeah.
And that changes your requirements, whether it's your layout or your picking productivity. That's kind of the challenge of any business, really, of any warehousing business.
And these days, there's 5 flavors of Cheerios.
Exactly.
I mean, if you think about it like that, right? So that creates a lot of complexity.
I like the one with lots of marshmallows. They still sell that, Greg?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm pretty
Well,
much
these
a straight
guys-
Cheerios or Honey Nut guy. That's pretty much it.
You were going to say something, Hector.
Yeah, so nowadays what we see is the customer is driving the bus, right?
Yes.
So there's, like you said, 5 flavors of every product, and orders are getting smaller and more frequent, and they want them faster and online and convenient. So what that does is the variety of products that now warehouses have to deal with, accommodating that, it becomes very expensive for the operation.
Yeah.
All right. So
stores as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
Because stores are becoming fulfillment centers in a lot of retail chains. I mean, if you've ever walked around any of the Kroger chains, you see people shopping for other people.
Yeah.
I
And
wish
really
wish it was me. But
what retail
That's
brands
what
are
we do.
doing as well, with warehouses that have to accommodate the retail strategy.
Yeah.
And they're having to do that at the I guess,
shipping eaches instead of pallets or cases.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and it affects their productivity. And they're
That's
saying, we'd rather eat the cost at the warehousing level than at the retail level.
Yeah.
So they're having to accommodate that.
That's a dramatic change. I don't know that everybody understands the magnitude of that change in a warehouse, but warehouses are generally engineered. When you guys started, maybe they were engineered to ship pallets or at worst cases, and in only rare instances, maybe to pool each pick items into a bin. And now it's so predominantly each picking, isn't it?
Yes,
I mean, they're sending that hand sanitizer to one person, not a pallet's worth to a Costco store or whatever, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's keep driving on the problems you're solving, and then we want to find out more about how you're solving the problem. So, Robbie, I know we kind of took a right-hand turn on SKU proliferation, but keep talking about what are some of the problems that Syncontext is helping solve.
So I guess to really summarize, I mean, we like to think we solve a lot of problems when it comes to operational efficiency. So I guess I'll start at the top. So I referenced the vice president and their problem of looking for more money, more budget.
Yep.
So when they're coming down to their operation and they're walking through and they're kind of saying, well, this is the layout I've been given. This is the distribution center that I've been given. Here's the 4 walls. Here's the racking. Sometimes they kind of think that this is what they're stuck with, and they walk through the aisles and they say, well, we're not going to change. We're not going to wholesale change everything. And so at that point, they're kind of saying, well, how do we find these extra dollars? How do I get my operators the tools to operate on a daily basis to optimize instead of just managing, So, they're looking for different tools. They're looking for ways to improve.
Yeah.
And from the operation level, having that experience and at the operational level, you can kind of see, well, these guys have a ton of stuff to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and what happens when they're having to deal with 100 new items a day.
Right.
All these manual processes sort of get missed, or they get expedited just from the lack of tools. And so I think the biggest problem we solve is we provide the tools for them to get the job done correctly, and be able to really know that it's working. I mean, the quantification of the problem is really the problem in and of itself, right? Is knowing where the problem is, knowing what the problem means to your business. Is really the problem, and they don't know that. They don't know where to start. They don't know what it means if they buy this or they change this rack. They just don't know that.
That's really the key. You nailed it right there with they don't know where to start, because it's an elephant. You learned this in B school. How do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time, but they don't know which is the first bite to take.
That's
and are your analytics guiding them towards that first bite?
Yes, they're very detailed. When they're stuck like that, we often walk a facility, and we find that facility was, as you mentioned, designed perhaps 10 years ago, and
for a different age,
exactly,
right?
and for something that was very adequate at the time, but they're struggling with the current situation. When the data is driving those changes, they can make that operation adaptable.
Yeah.
All right. So there's so much that we just shared that last 3 minutes. Is there any? So before we kind of shift gears over and kind of y'all shed a little bit more light on how you do it, because then we want to broaden it back out and we get y'all's thoughts on kind of the world we live in these days. Any other problems that are really important that we didn't kind of touch on before we move into? No. Okay. Good. I got to get permission to move forward in these conversations.
I think it's hard to have a problem that is more significant than a 10-year-old warehouse operating in today's commerce.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, 10, 20, maybe even 5, right? The landscape has changed so dramatically that if you didn't design your warehouse yesterday,
right,
you might already be obsolete or at least ill-constrained for the consumer-driven economy that we've got today.
Yep, absolutely.
So on that note, we want to understand how you go about solving some of the challenges we've walked through, and also, if you don't mind, for our audience, kind of take a two-prong approach. Talk about how you all solve it as a business, and then give a tip or two about how folks that maybe don't have access to what y'all do, how they can solve it. Right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Hector, let's start with you.
So as a business, we solve it just with technology, right? We enable our product to be out there is the explosion of adoption in cloud technology, which gave us distribution for complex analytics, overnight, accessible to pretty much everybody, and easy to implement. So that's how we do it as a business, connecting with their existing systems, and things that we recommend to companies when we see them. And we see just a few weeks ago, we're in a facility that was fully automated up in Canada, a fantastic, impressive facility. And so when we look at conventional operations, the biggest difference between the two, other than you have robots moving the product, is that everything in the automated facility is data driven. Right? There's no guesswork. There's no everything is calculated, and that allows them to take a lot of efficiency. So for companies that are generating a ton of information currently in their existing systems, is using them to understand metrics in your warehouse, like how much you're traveling, right? What's the travel time?
Yep.
Selection is 50%.
You mean from one pick to the next?
Exactly.
Right?
And that over thousands of SKUs
Sure.
and
Huge.
orders.
And an entire day. Yeah, right.
And when you look at direct labor, that adds up to roughly 50% of your total direct labor. So there's big opportunities.
It's travel time.
It's selection.
Okay.
And a big component of that is
travel. Got it.
So it seems like
Wow.
half the battle that what y'all bring to the table, half of the value maybe, rounding, is getting that data that is invisible out on the table, so we can make more informed, data-driven decisions about tweaking the operation. Right?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And going back to the collision of the two worlds is bringing that to the operator that has the team, the leadership, the experience. That's going to take that data and be dangerous with it. So,
and going back to the cereal reference we talked about before about the different varieties that are out there.
You're making me hungry.
Yeah, I was going to actually use vodka. That was one of our the companies that we went to recently.
Let's use vodka.
Yeah, vodka is a good one. But there's so many different varieties of it, and that's one of the biggest things is that they just don't know. One moves maybe 1 per month, the other moves 100 per month. But yeah, going back to that reference is that there's decision fatigue when it comes to making decisions in the operation. And the thing that we notice is that we come in and try to clarify those things. And so when they know what they're looking for, and I mentioned this before, but when they know what they're looking for, it makes things more clear on where to start. And without us or without the analytics or the that optimization mindset is they just sometimes just don't do anything because it's okay.
Analysis paralysis.
Exactly. Where do we start? If we do this, then we have to do that. If we do this, we have to do that. And I think just being able to simplify it, it's not as complex as it needs to be. It simplifies it and creates a roadmap and a timeline even to really address these issues.
Yeah.
And we hear that so often of I'm leaving if we ever have to reslot this building, or I'm leaving if we ever have to find a new building because it's just a project that I definitely don't want to go down.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so it gets put off and
Those
put off
pains.
and put off. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to go broader here now, but before we do, real quick, y'all mentioned a variety of environments and sectors that y'all work in, from on the environment, from the automated side to the highly manual side. Doesn't matter.
And probably the combination of the two as well.
Yes,
right?
absolutely. So we work with companies that have both of them, and we're big proponents of automation. Actually, we have just recently a partnership alliance with Fetch Robotics, which are here in MODEX.
Yep.
And what we see is two things. For companies not to try to solve all the problems at one time. So
not boil the ocean.
Exactly. So just improving, having incremental improvement sometimes goes a really long way.
It's like the GE approach. Back when GE was the world dominant power it was, right?
That's
Give
right.
me 1%, 2% year by year or month by month.
That's right.
Okay.
It compounds over time, and we see networks that we work with that, over 4 months, they have a 7% improvement in the overall network. And it's not as disruptive because you can't just turn off the lights on the warehouse, shut it down, and then reorganize it.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, so in real brief, all sectors, I mean, it sounds like you're doing food, you're doing spirits. What sectors are y'all really prevalent in?
Yeah, we touch on most of them. I think grocery is extremely prevalent just because of the challenges that they have, and the margins are just so low. There's tons of competition, especially over the last couple of years. So grocery is, we find we go into these operations and they're all suffering from the same problems, whether it's a $100 million business or $15 billion business. When you go into the warehouse, there's not really much separating them other than a bigger budget maybe.
Yeah.
But they're all
bigger shelves.
Exactly. Yeah. So they're all kind of encountering the same problems, but certainly we've walked through, you name it, customer products, pharmaceuticals, clothing. I can name all of them essentially. They're all sort of, going through the same problems, but it's really the degree at which they're going through these problems, and I guess the whether it means something to them, and if we catch them at the right time, whether it's budget season, it's usually more prevalent. But but I would say, we operate in different sectors: wholesale, retail, food service, even you name it.
Another tight margin business.
Exactly. Yeah. It's essentially anybody who's looking to get that optimization up to a different level, and increase their metrics.
Okay. Let's broaden out, and Hector, I want to start with you here. There's no shortage of things, of topics, from innovation to just kind of the current environment that we're all getting through globally.
You can say it. I'll say it.
Coronavirus.
Yeah, and supply chain disruption. Right?
It is supply chain, huge supply chain disruption, and hopefully, as we've talked throughout a lot of these shows, 10 years from now, hopefully the story that will dominate this period will be the supply chain disruption versus the human disruption, right? But what's one thing that's got your attention more than anything else in the global supply chain community right now?
Well, I think it's as I mentioned, just the pressure that the customers are putting in the warehouse, in the fulfillment optimization, in the fulfillment operation.
Yep.
The warehouse is the heart of the supply chain, right? So all the disruption from promotions, SKUs. You talked about the coronavirus. I don't know.
Sure.
What is it with the toilet paper? But it's flying off the shelves.
Yeah.
Strange.
Yeah.
But all those things, make the need for supply chains to be adaptable, to be resilient, and I think
you can't run it like it's 1989 anymore.
You can't, and that transition is it's painful, and sometimes it's slow for some companies.
Yep, it's kind of like I'm gonna steal this tagline: if you don't get help here, get help somewhere.
That's right. Charter hospitals.
Yeah,
that's right.
So it's kind of like if you don't get help with Syncontext, you got to get help somewhere because you can't. You've got to evolve. You've got to be frontline. You got to know the data. Visibility is such a cliche these days, but it's a reason behind that because to be as nimble as you must be. I like how you put warehouse as the heart of supply chain. To be as nimble, especially getting into these urban environments and that final mile, all that stuff, you've got to know what you're working with.
You can't afford to be paralyzed and stand on the status quo these days. You just can't.
Yep.
It used to be damaging to your business. Now it can be deadly to your business.
Oh, nice.
And I think you have to recognize that. So I like that.
Yeah.
If you don't get help with Syncontext, right? Get it somewhere.
Yeah.
Don't stand still.
Absolutely. Okay, Robbie, same question. What's one thing that you just can't get enough information about these days?
I think there's certainly a lot of things, and I think Hector mentioned the biggest part, but competition is over the last 3 or 4 years. The amount of businesses being purchased by other larger businesses and creating that, you don't see that on the retail level. You just see, okay, this larger business just made an acquisition or they merged. But we see that the impact on the supply chain where there's now double the amount of warehouses, there's double the amount of staff, there's different processes, there's different cultures, and things just freeze for 2-3 years because nothing gets done. So being in the industry, you certainly notice the impact of that growth. And I think more so, and especially after walking around. Personally, this is the biggest supply chain conference that I've been to. We attend a lot of conferences and we speak at a lot of them. But just walking around the show floor, there's just so much stuff you can see, and I can imagine. I'm not walking around looking at these technologies for my business, but I could imagine being in that position and saying, well, how much has this been growing over the past 20 years? If I was here 20 years ago, what would I be seeing?
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't be seeing, AMRs or robots or, suction cups picking up boxes. That wouldn't be anywhere close to what I'd be seeing. So I think, if we're talking to VPs, we're talking to senior level executives, is they have a lot of stuff on their plate that they're dealing with. And, we're talking to them about optimization. We know how important that is. And I think we certainly need to understand that there's so much stuff out there. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of stuff that they can
Too much
invest
noise.
in. Exactly. And
Gotta
so
look
I think
for the signals, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Just like consumers have so many options with vodka and cereal, right?
Yeah.
Leaders of companies have exactly the same. Just think about the number of floor-operated robotics options that they have here. I can think of 4 off the top of my head. They have to be going which one is right for me, and what if I do it wrong? And that's what
Including our
creates
friends
that
at-
paralysis.
That's right.
Right? That's
Including
what
our friends at Geek Plus over there.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what creates that paralysis is they don't want to make the wrong decision.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes the primary goal. Don't make the wrong decision, and no decision at least isn't explicitly the wrong decision.
Yeah, it's not as risky on the surface, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, so you just mentioned you are at a lot of events. I've seen Hector. I've seen you speak at events. I think you were on Supply Chain Brain not too long ago.
Yep.
Enjoyed that interview. Y'all are in demand. It's got to be a good feeling, right?
Yep.
But for folks that don't catch you out at events or some of the various interviews y'all do, where can they get more information about Syncontext? And Robbie?
Well, obviously our website, www.syncontext.com, would be a great place to start. We're also on LinkedIn at Syncontext Supply Chain. One of the things we actually did want to mention
Sure.
on the show is one of the things that we do to really showcase the power of optimization and the shift between warehouse management to optimization is we do a diagnostic with our system. Which involves the operation providing us with operational data, so data that they have already, just basic stuff.
Yep.
We usually would run that through our system and kind of quantify the opportunity and what it actually means. What are we talking about when we sit here, and talk all this, all this stuff about. The shift between management and optimization. What do we really mean by that? And quantifying it goes a long way.
Demystifying as well.
Exactly. Yes.
Identifying that first bite.
Exactly.
Really.
So
Right.
on our website, and one of the things we wanted to offer is until the end of April, we're going to do free diagnostics for viewers of your show.
Oh,
Nice.
So
cool.
if they want more information about that, they can go to our website at syncontext.com/diagnostic, and they just need to contact us, reference the show, and we'll do a diagnostic for them. It usually takes a few weeks, but it'll give them a lot of insight into what's really happening in their business and even some pointers on what to move forward with.
Even
Love
if they don't go forward with Syncontext, take advantage of that.
Yep.
Right? Because
Yep.
that will at least get you off the dime.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
it's more work for us in the office, but we're happy to do it because it showcases the power of the application and the system that we're working with. So
Yeah, that's a
Love
great
that.
offer.
Yeah.
Thank you for
We
doing
will
that.
add that, and if you'd like, we can add that to the episode page as a link. Really have enjoyed this conversation. It's tough to do it justice in 40 minutes or less, but I've got kind of a walking around sense of
I know exactly
the
what
story
these guys
behind
do.
the
So
growth.
If you don't call them, contact me, and I'll tell you what they can do for you.
All right, so we can find y'all obviously at your website, social media, at different
Yeah.
events. Anything else we're missing? Y'all, the next event y'all are going to be at, did we talk about that?
I mean, we haven't. I don't think we've planned anything after this. We've
Well,
been
it's
traveling
kind
for
of-
the last 3 weeks, where we just want to get home to Vancouver,
Yeah,
enjoy the sunlight.
yeah.
Well,
Get some sun.
as we know, the event landscape, a lot of that's going
Yes.
virtual. We were going to be at an event here in late April, and that's moved to a virtual event. That may be the status quo for the next couple months. We'll see.
Yeah.
But such a pleasure to finally sit down
Yeah.
and kind of get the story behind Syncontext, Hector.
Likewise. Thank you, Scott. Greg, we really appreciate the time, and we've been following your show for a while, so it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great to have you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having us.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll add that link, or you can find that link for the free diagnostic. Such a nice offer there. Syncontext.com. It's syncontext.com/diagnostic. And, of course, you can learn more information about the company there. Safe travels back to the Vancouver area. Go Canucks, and we'll have to check back in on y'all a few months down the road.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You bet.
Great. Thank you.
All right, so Greg, that continues. The hits keep coming here at MODEX, meeting with the movers and shakers,
Yeah.
the folks that are moving the needle in a
Yeah.
meaningful way. How many
Yeah.
other cliches can I throw in that one little?
You want me to go for a few?
Keep going.
Look, I love to see people who've actually done it get into the consulting and even the technology solutions game, because you don't have to teach them the business when they're on site at your business.
Yep.
They can dive right in, learn. They know the questions to ask to extract your needs from
Been there,
you.
done it.
Yeah. I
Agreed.
love companies that practice this way.
I'm with you. All right, so big thanks to our guest today, Hector Orozco, CEO with Syncontext, Robbie Cluett, Director of Customer Success and Business Development with Syncontext. Safe travels back to our audience. Stay with us as we continue our coverage of MODEX 2020, the biggest supply chain trade show in the Western Hemisphere, right here in Atlanta, GA. On behalf of Greg White, Scott Luton, the whole team, Clay and Amanda, the whole gang's here. Join us next time on Supply Chain Now, and have a great week. Thanks, everybody.